Krishna Caitanya Prabhupada Jayapataka Swami Maharaj.
The following is a lecture given by His Holiness Jayapataka Swami on September 17, 1983 in Atlanta, Georgia. The class begins with a reading from the Sri Caitanya Caritāmrita, Madhya Līlā, chapter 19, verse 136 through 138.
The instructions given by Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu 500 years ago to Sri Rupa Goswami in Prayag. I believe it's in Prayag. What is today known as Allahabad, the place of the Kumbh Mela, where in 1977, 31 million people attended. Largest festival in the world. At that place, you can still today see the Dasasameda Gata, where Lord Caitanya had this discussion with Rupa Goswami. Prabhu kohe sono rupa bhakti rase lakhan sutta rupe kohi bistar na jai varnan. Translation. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu said, "My dear Rupa, please listen to me. It is not possible to describe devotional service completely. Therefore, I am just trying to give you a synopsis of the symptoms of devotional service." Translation with repetition. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu said,
Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu said,
"My dear Rupa, please listen to me.
Please listen to me.
It is not possible to describe devotional service completely. Therefore, I am just trying to give you a synopsis of the symptoms of devotional service. Text 137. Para para sanno govir bhakti rasa sindhu tumai chakaite tar kohiyako bindu. Translation. The ocean of the transcendental mellow of devotional service is so big that no one can estimate its length and breadth. However, just to help you taste it, I am describing but one drop. Translation. The ocean of the transcendental mellow of devotional service is so big that no one can estimate its length and breadth. However, just to help you taste it, I am describing but one drop. Eto brahmanda bhari ananta jivagan chorasi lakha yonite koraye brahman. Translation. In this universe there are limitless living entities in 8,400,000 species, and all are wandering within this universe. Translation. In this universe there are limitless living entities. In 8,400,000 species. And all are wandering within this universe. Purport by His Divine Grace, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This is a challenge to so-called scientists and philosophers, give Maharaja a seat, who presume that there are living entities on this planet only. So-called scientists are going to the moon and they say that there is no life there. This does not tally with Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's version. He says that everywhere within the universe there are unlimited numbers of living entities in 8,400,000 different forms. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 24, we find that the living entities are sarvagataha, which means in Sanskrit that they can go anywhere. This indicates that there are living entities everywhere. They exist on land, in water, in air, in fire, and in ether. Thus, there are living entities in all types of material elements. Since the entire material universe is composed of 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, why should there be living entities on one planet and not others? Such a foolish version can never be accepted by Vedic students. From the Vedic literatures, we understand that there are living entities on each and every planet, regardless of whether the planet is composed of earth, water, fire, or ether. These entities may not have the same forms that are found on this planet Earth, but they have different forms composed of different elements. Even on this earth, we can see that the forms of land animals are different from the forms of aquatics. According to the circumstance, living conditions differ, but undoubtedly there are living entities everywhere. Why should we deny the existence of living entities on this or that planet? Those who have claimed to have gone to the moon have not gone there, or else their imperfect vision cannot actually perceive the particular type of living entities there. Living entities are described as ananta, or unlimited. Nonetheless, they are said to belong to 8,400,000 species, as stated in the Vishnu Purana of the Vedic literatures. Jalajana valakshani stavara lakshavingsati krimayo rudra shankyakya pakshinam dasalakshanam tringsha lakshani pasala chatur lakshani manushaha. Translation: there are 900,000 species living in the water. There are also 2 million non-moving living entities, stalwart, such as trees and plants. There are also 1,100,000 species of insects and reptiles. And there are 1 million species of birds. As far as quadrupeds are concerned, there are 3 million varieties. And there are 400,000 species, there are 400,000 human species. End of translation. So some of these species may exist on one planet and not on another. But in any case, within all the planets of the universe, and even in the sun, there are living entities. This is the verdict of Vedic literatures, as Bhagavad Gita 2:20 confirms. Najayati mriyadeva kadachin nayanga bhutva bhavita va nabhuya ajo nitya sasvato yang purano nahanyati hanyamane sarire. Quote: for the soul there is never birth nor death, nor, having once been, does he ever cease to be. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, undying, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. Unquote. Since the living entities are never annihilated, they simply transmigrate from one life to another, one life form to another. Thus, there is an evolution of forms according to the degree of developed consciousness. One experiences different degrees of consciousness in different forms. A dog's consciousness is different from a man's. Even within a species, we find that a father's consciousness is different from his son's, and that a child's consciousness is different from a youth's. Just as we find different forms, we find different states of consciousness. When we see different states of consciousness, we may take it for granted that the bodies are different. In other words, different types of bodies depend on different states of consciousness. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 8:6. Yang yang avapi smarang bhavam. One's consciousness at the time of death determines a type of body of the living entity. This is the process of transmigration of the soul. A variety of bodies is already there. We change from one body to another in terms of our consciousness. Thus end the purport by His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. of the Sri Caitanya Caritāmrita Madhya Līlā, chapter 19, text 138. So, here Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu is revealing to Rupa Goswami the secret of transmigration of the soul. Actually, this is a very basic understanding of Vedic culture, so he's just, as a review practically, he'll be just passing through it. Won't be giving that much detailed time, but he'll be giving point by point, because in 10 days he's going to be covering the complete Vedic understanding, and we're getting a synopsis of that. Transmigration of the soul is known in in Western terminology as reincarnation. Hare Krishna. Reincarnation is actually not an exactly appropriate term, because it somehow signifies that you somehow incarnate. You become karna, or you become flesh, and then again you don't become flesh, and you become some. The term itself, if you divide up the word how do you say that? Etymology. Anyway, if you divide it up according to its definition, it's very difficult to. It's very simple to understand the meaning. And that meaning isn't exactly correct. Because what happens in the transmigration of the soul is that each form of body is already there. There's already, in a seed form, different type of insects, different types of animals, different types of human beings. And one doesn't become flesh. One always remains the consciousness or the spirit, and enters as a living force into the new body, right in the womb of the mother at the time of conception. And from there, when the soul is present, then there is development of embryo, or whatever the species may be, development of seed, embryo, until finally there's birth. If the soul is not present, it would be a stillbirth or a miscarriage. As long as the soul is present, there will be development of embryo, development of the body. Once the soul leaves, then the body stops growing and stops functioning. So, how many types of bodies you see nowadays? You have biologists, zoologists, you have various people researching all the various species of life, studying each one for their whole life. One thing is mentioned here, that when we leave our body, at the time we normally call as death, we don't die. We go on, and according to our consciousness, we again achieve a new body. If our consciousness is very elevated, then we achieve an elevated form. If our consciousness is very base, then we achieve some inferior form, just appropriate to our consciousness. So here we have some scientists who have developed their consciousness, and they're absorbing themselves deeply into the habit of the cockroach, its mating habits, its all the various habits, or some rare kui bird or something. If they die thinking of that bird or cockroach or insect, what is their destination? There's a good possibility that if they don't have any other spiritual asset, they may also learn firsthand what it is to be one of those creatures by becoming that in their next birth, or taking that body on. If they have spiritual asset, then of course their consciousness would be more elevated. Depends on how your consciousness is formed. So at the time of leaving this body, whatever we're absorbed in, at that moment, that's what we achieve in our next life. So, the basic process of yoga means to form the consciousness or purify the consciousness so that it comes to the highest pure level. So that when we leave this body, we don't again have to take rebirth. We can go back to God, back to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So if our consciousness is filled with Krishna consciousness, then naturally when we leave our body, we go back to God. If our consciousness is filled with altruistic work, we may become a demigod, or may become a living entity on a very elevated material platform, but we'll again have to take rebirth and death. We're not free from this cycle of reincarnation or transmigration. If we're absorbed in our profit, like most materialistic human beings, they may again become a human being. And if a person dies in complete ignorance, as a madman or a drunkard or in intoxication, then they may become an animal or a tree. In India, you find that there are certain trees where the two trees come out at the same time, right from the base, and one of them, they grow, right, one tree completely grows over the other tree. But they're two different trees, but they completely intertwine and they grow over each other. The Srila Prabhupada was describing that when a man and woman die while they're having sex, then they can take birth like that as a tree, because at that time they were already absorbed in a body consciousness, so then they are able to achieve that type of birth. Therefore, the Vedas say that no one should engage in sex while traveling on a train or while not by traveling and so on. Because at that time, if you die, it's very dangerous. So, in this way, according to one's consciousness, the time of death, we achieve our next birth. So everyone has to die sooner or later. So death for a yogi is not a very fearful thing. It's just a question of being prepared. So during lifetime, we prepare our consciousness by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Which powerful mantra is able to actually bring the consciousness to the pure platform. Actually, in every age, there are various type of processes recommended for self-realization or God-realization. In the first age, it was recommended to do meditation. In the second age, it was recommended to do fire sacrifice. In the previous age, before this age, it was recommended to do worship in temples. But in this particular age, the process recommended is chanting of mantras, especially the holy names of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So actually the Vedas are shortcutting. There's no need for scientists to try to figure out how many type of fish there are, how many type of insects. The Vedas automatically tell, alright, there are about 900,000 types of fish in basic categories. You see, there are so many types of insects. You don't have to do all the research, because when Krishna created the world, He knew how many things, basic categories there were. Some of them are not always visible. Dinosaurs are a certain category, left over from a previous age, but they're not present now. They may be on some other planet. They may be here in seed form. When the proper environment comes, again they'll come out. Like that, there are many species. Not all of them are existing at the same time in the same planet. It doesn't mean that because we breathe oxygen, the plants are breathing, carbon dioxide, according to the scientists. And the fish, they're able to exist on oxygen in the water, but very minute quantities, dissolved in water. And like this, so even on this planet, there are different type of balances created through the plants and the animals. It doesn't mean on other planets, there are similar chemicals and different type of life systems are completely different than what we know here. And it's not that every life system is also on a gross platform. there are also very many subtle living entities who are not normally even visible to our eyesight. Just like we can't see so many microorganisms living in the air. But under microscopic inspection, we can find that they are there. So everything is relative. Just like ants has a whole society, a whole city, one little hill. So similarly, we're looking down at the ants, thinking that, these ants are so insignificant. We are the human beings. We have our big cities. Just see, they're creating this minute little, ant city. What a ridiculous civilization. Prabhupada, one time in the holy Dham of Mayapur, he said, just as we look down at the ants, there are creatures on other planets looking down at the human beings, modern cities, thinking, what is this ridiculous thing? Looking down, their life, their intelligence, their ability are proportionately greater as ours are greater than the ants. One day, as we calculated, in one night, this is a basic system of measurement. So in the higher planets, there are entities whose 6 months, by our calculation, is their one day. That means in a period of 1 year, they have 1 day and 1 night. And they're living for thousands of years under that calculation. 365 days in a year, each day equaling 6 months, each night 6 months. There's also evidence that in previous ages, in previous Kali Yugas, as a cycle goes from golden to silver, bronze, and iron, that this is the Kali Yuga, the age of quarrel, dissension, hypocrisy. So it mentions in the Srimad Bhagavatam that in a previous Kali Yuga, many millions of years ago, there was interstellar wars done by missiles. And at that time, a form of Lord Buddha came and stopped it by engaging those warring people in more peaceful occupations of self-realization. So, factually speaking, the methods by which the modern science is trying to probe into what is the universe is so ridiculous. They're sending off this spaceship that's just left our solar system and supposed to reach the next solar system or something in 50,000 years or 18,000 years or something. And they put a little medallion in it, naked man, naked woman standing there with a little kid and some other articles trying to identify this is for our planet. This mental that they're doing is so ridiculous. You see. What is actually the universe? They have no clue. Now they're just sitting here and then getting a few radio bounces and then they're thinking, what does that mean? What is this? We're getting this light. Maybe there's some chromium on that planet or some different elements. And they're trying to figure out everything like that. The Vedas are clearly describing, because the great yogis, by their psychic power, they could leave their body and go and travel all over the universe. And so for the higher levels, all these playing around that they're doing is very ridiculous. It has no value whatsoever. So rather than just wait 18,000 years for the message to come back in the next solar system, when none of us will be around, the shortcut is given by the Vedas. Alright, you want to know what the universe is like? This is what it's like. And there's no other book or collection of literatures in the world which has revealed all of this information. It's in the Vedas that atomic energy was revealed. It was Hitler got the idea of atomic weapons from the Vedas. And it was only due to the CIA that they got it from Hitler and were able to beat him at the punch. But the original whole atomic theory is coming from the Vedas, written in Sanskrit codes over 5,000 years ago. So what the Vedic literatures are containing, you see, they give a broad description how to overcome the laws of nature and how to achieve perfection in life. But the culmination, of course, is that actually all type of material achievements in themselves are temporary. Because the universe itself, after so many millions of years, will also be finally destroyed. Even though it may be billions of years, but at one time it will also have its end. But we as eternal souls, as spirit, we are part of Krishna. We're part of God. And we don't have any limitation to our existence. We are eternal. So the real perfection of life is to get out of this reincarnation cycle, to get out of this material consciousness. And that is done it's done in a very simple way. We don't have to give up the material things, but we see them all as the energies of Krishna. By seeing everything as the energy of the Supreme Lord and utilizing everything for His service, then we become freed from the laws of material nature which normally bind people and force them to suffer, even they don't want to suffer. Give them enjoyment spontaneously. And rather they keep the living entities in pure Krishna consciousness. They keep the living entities in their original spiritual consciousness. So this is the basis. In this universe there are limitless living entities in 8,400,000 species. And all are wandering within this universe. So wandering means not that we are going to the moon and someone... That wandering is there, but very rarely. The wandering means that when we die, we may take birth in another planet, not necessarily this planet. Depending upon our consciousness, we'll achieve an appropriate planet. Maybe this planet. Maybe another planet, maybe a lower planet or a higher planet. Maybe in any variety of forms. What those forms are, of course, our science fiction writers have made so many various type of speculations. But actually nobody would be able to say by the ordinary material means available to us. But by the process of yoga, if one wants to travel to another planet, they can travel. There are various methods. Prabhupada has written a book, Easy Journey to Other Planets. So the various systems of how to travel to another planet without using machines are explained there. And the ultimate planet to achieve is the planet of God, planet of Krishna, Krishna Loka, the highest planet in the spiritual world. The description that there are millions of universes. And in each universe there are countless living entities. But these material universes comprise only a small portion of the Supreme Lord's potential energy. The greater portion is in the spiritual world. That's called the Tripada Vibhuti, or the three-quarter potential energy. This material, unlimited universes, of which what galaxies and Milky Way, everything we see is considered to be one great universe. In terms of the Vedic definitions, one Mahavishwa. You see. And there are countless, millions, Anantakoti Brahmanda of these universes. But beyond that, there is the spiritual world. The spiritual world is never created, it is never destroyed. It is ever existing. And that is our original abode. That is where we originally came from. And until we achieve that complete free spiritual existence, we are never going to be completely satisfied. So, here Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explaining to Rupa Goswami about the universe. He also explains in the next verse about the soul. Keshagra sateka bhaga puna satangsa kori tar samashukha jiver sarupa vichari. The length and breadth of a living entity is described as 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair. This is the original subtle nature of the living entity. Translation with repetition. The length and breadth of the living entity.
The length and breadth of the living entity
is described as 1/10,000th part
is described as 1/10,000th part
of the tip of a hair.
of the tip of a hair.
This is the original subtle nature of the living entity.
This is the original subtle nature of the living entity.
So in this body, no, that's all. So in this body, we are residing in our subtle nature as one spiritual atom, 1/10,000th part, the size of 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair. And although in this subtle spiritual form, it is so minute, that power, the potential of that soul, or Jiva Atma, is greater than millions and millions of suns. Because every sun has a beginning and a destruction. But that particle, that eternal living entity, is indestructible. It can never be cut, dried, or destroyed in any way. That is who we are. And as we develop spiritually, although that is a subtle, as it's mentioned here, it's a subtle form of the soul, then also a spiritual form, a spiritual personality, everything develops from that subtle existence. Now, that subtle form is what's keeping this body alive. When the spirit leaves the body is dead. Whatever personality is coming through the body is just a perverted reflection of our original spiritual personality. Just like pure white light going through various colored glass, red, blue, yellow, will come out as red light, yellow light, blue light. So our original spiritual personality is not coming through in its pure form in this material life. Depending on our conditioning, through society, through association, through the various types of bodies, it's coming through in different shades. That personality also comes even in a dog body. That's why you see some personality there. But it's covered. The consciousness is limited. So it's like coming out black, gray, blue, very dimly. And then a human being can develop to the complete purity of consciousness, so that the actual pure consciousness can come out. But to do that, one has to transcend the material conditioning. That is the process of devotional service. By practicing serving Krishna in pure devotion, one becomes freed from all the material conditionings and is actually able to realize the original spiritual personality, the original spiritual form, the original spiritual existence and relationship with Krishna. Sarvupadi vinimuktam tatparatvena nirmalam. Being free, sarvupadi vinirmuktam. Being free from all upadis, all type of material designations. I'm white, I'm black, I'm Chinese, I'm American, I'm Russian, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm poor, I'm rich, I'm thin, I'm fat, I'm beautiful, I'm ugly, I'm an agnostic, I'm a this, I'm a that. Whether it's a physical designation or a mental designation, it's all temporary, can all change. Our real identity is beyond all those temporary, superficial designations. When one is freed from all the superficial conceptions and designations and conditionings, tatparatena nirmalam, it becomes completely purified and sees from the spiritual platform, the real eternal existence, that, and then in that pure consciousness engages with the senses in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord, who is the master of all the senses. Rishikena, Rishikesha, Sevana. That is the liberated status. That is then the eternal relationship of devotion, of love for God is established. That is the goal of every religion, to achieve love for Godhead. But the scientific system of how to achieve it has been revealed by Caitanya Mahaprabhu. And it begins from having the proper consciousness that we're not this body. Pure love for God, where you pray to God simply to maintain your body, is a perversion. It's not in a proper understanding of what is the position of God, the Supreme Lord, what is our position as parts of God, as spiritual entities. It is filled with body consciousness, with materialistic misconceptions. So the actual science of God realization, the science of developing pure love for God, that has been given by Caitanya Mahaprabhu. This is known as the topmost of all yoga systems, called Bhakti Yoga. So actually the world today is suffering only due to lack of these conceptions, lack of this understanding of their real identity. Today, Russians are shooting down Korean airliners. The Muslims are fighting the Christian militia in Beirut. Why? One man is thinking, I am a Christian. The other man is thinking, I am a Muslim. But actually, they're all eternal spirit souls. They're all part of God. Krishna doesn't want them to be fighting each other, who's a Christian, who's a Muslim. Neither do their scriptures say they should do that, but they're being manipulated by politicians. They're bewildered by misconceptions of who they are. So what Krishna consciousness is dealing with is the ideology and the actual true philosophy which is going to change the whole world and can actually create a worldwide peace, a worldwide government. Why is it that Russia is singling out the Hare Krishna movement, arresting all of our preachers over there? They're not anti-communist. They're not preaching anti-communistic in terms of that. They're avoiding political issues. They're only preaching this philosophy. But they're being singled out and persecuted. Billy Graham wasn't. None of the other Christian or Muslim they're not. But the Hare Krishnas are. Why? Because we're preaching this pure theism and it's attracting all of the intellectuals all over the world. Because it is timeless knowledge revealing the real position. When everyone realizes this and all these differences in the world which are creating wars, which are creating differences, they automatically dissipate. Therefore we can live together whether we're various races, various ages, various backgrounds. Here we have, in our movement, we have farmers from the Midwest. We have, in their previous life, we have movie stars from Manhattan. We have we have Fords. We have Walter Reuther's daughter. But they can all work together. Why? Because they have the proper consciousness. They have transcended all these differences and designations. But the modern institutions, they're trying to preserve these differences, trying to preserve these conditionings. Therefore, they're preserving war, and rather promoting it. You see. So whether the Krishna conscious movement is able to change the consciousness of the people before they have their next nuclear war, or the nuclear war which is so impending, or whether after. But the only hope for having a worldwide peaceful situation is by having this type of spiritual consciousness. Otherwise, all the various religious sects are all warring with each other. All the political ideologies are warring with each other. The only way to transcend that is by pure, real spiritual knowledge, by pure God consciousness. Which is actually what all the essence of every religion is, but people are just missing the point. So, We owe everything to Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who has brought from the spiritual world this pure spiritual knowledge. And we owe to Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada for bringing it from India. Even the Indians have not fully understood this. Some of them have, some haven't. The majority haven't. This is not based upon being of a particular caste or a particular nationality. It depends upon one's spiritual development. Indians can easily understand this, but they're ignoring it due to various other being misdirected by so many materialistic leaders. So now we need all over the world as people to take up this spiritual path, whether they remain in their ordinary material situation or whether they become full-time missionaries, and they should work for uplifting the consciousness of themselves and of others. That is the highest welfare work. Saving the seals in northern Siberia or whatever, Baltic Straits, is a very piecemeal effort, you see. There are so many creatures that are dying. The human species is practically degrading to lower than animals. So the sentiment that people want to preserve natural order, natural harmony, that sentiment shouldn't just be misplaced piecemeal, but it should be directed at the very root. That the real solution, if people are God conscious, then automatically they're going to stop slaughtering seals, they're going to stop slaughtering all type of animals, unless it's absolutely essential to stave off starvation. Automatically there's going to be ecological balances. Automatically there's going to be wonderful understanding between different people because of proper spiritual realization. So, this is the basic request of Caitanya Mahaprabhu, that people should understand the teachings of Krishna. At least understand them. And after understanding, the next stage is if one can try to practice them, to live them. And if one can go a step further, having gained some spiritual benefit from that, if one can try to give it to others, then that is the most magnanimous thing one could do. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Any questions?
There's one thing which I've heard mentioned last every time, but I don't know where it comes from. There's been mentioned that when a devotee feels like lack of enthusiasm in devotional service for a longer period of time, that might be due to a state of consciousness he has achieved in the last lifetime. If somebody continues in Krishna consciousness for several years, but then suddenly feels a period of lack of enthusiasm, it might be because his past life he has come to a certain point at which he meets again now in this lifetime. So if he overcomes that point, then he can actually proceed further with Krishna consciousness.
Well, the fact that we're in the material world means that we have not finished up we have not crossed over all of the various stages required to achieve self-realization. So some people, they take to God consciousness very quickly because in previous life they've already have a background. Even though this life they may have been very materialistic, but when they come in contact with devotees, suddenly they feel some attraction because in previous life they've already performed certain yogic practices or sacrifices or devotional services. But the fact that we are here Whether or not a person may be spontaneously attracted due to previous asset, or whether one may be just coming for the first time, or have been given some special mercy by some devotee, preacher, that the fact that we're here means that we have yet to become completely purified. So those impurities are not only coming from this life, but they're residual. We may have accumulated a few impurities in this life, but there are many from previous lives. So every time we're faced with a certain trial, ultimately we have to cross over that. Prabhupada gave the example that, say someone has a headache or has some kind of pain, and you just take a painkiller. You don't take a medicine, you just take a painkiller to get rid of the pain. That one will have to, that's only postponing that. That it's in one's karma that you have to suffer that pain. You see, if you go take a medicine or you do some remedial thing, you may be able to avoid it in a natural way, that's one thing. But if you just try to avoid it by taking a painkiller, then later on again you'll suffer the same pain, you just postponed it. So in our spiritual development, we have certain attachments, subtle growths to our body, to our society, to our material situations. Until we cross over those attachments, then again and again we'll be coming back to the same point. We'll get up to the certain point, and then we'll be faced, it may be a different form, but you may even feel like I've been here before. It's a similar situation, but maybe different setting. And then until you cross over that stage, until you come up to the next higher level of spiritual understanding, if you again fail, then again you come again and again and again.
So sometimes such a time might be very long.
But if you just cross over it, then it's finished. So the whole point is that if one is very steady, chanting the Hare Krishna, following the regular principles, maintaining good association, no matter what various stages come up, if you just keep plugging at it, so to speak, then at your practice of yoga, then you're going to cross over those stages. If a person's weak, if they're neglectful, if they're not very careful about their practices, about their meditation, about their sadhana, then these things, they become very, if you're riding on a good, at that period you may be riding on a, so to speak, a relatively easy period in your karma. So then even without chanting very much, even without practicing very strictly, somehow you're able to pull on. But then because you're not actually on the spiritual platform, then when your karmas reverse the other way, you may only be covered 25%. So 75% you're still within the laws of karma. In your spiritual consciousness, then the effect of these changes will not be very great. It'll be 20 or 25% type of pull, which you can cross over. So that's why one is recommended to develop very good spiritual habits. So when you meet some obstacle, you can cross over it. You build up a spiritual momentum, chanting every day, practicing every day. Then when some obstacle comes up, taking maybe a little extra help from the spiritual master or from the God brothers or God sisters, whatever the case may be, then you can cross over those obstacles. The weaker you are, then when a trial comes up, the more difficult it will be to cross over. But if you take the proper help, there's nothing can stop your spiritual progress. It's described just as the flow of the Ganges river is going to the ocean. You see, it just whether the route may be this, that, somehow or another it finds its way to the ocean. So in the same way, our flow of devotion, if the desire is there, I want to reach Krishna, I want to go back to Godhead, I want to achieve my original pure consciousness, that I want to understand the absolute truth, one will be led to that destination. One will be able to overcome the obstacles. But our trouble is in the mind, especially, that we start to lose focus on, and then when we lose focus, then that flow is interrupted. So to keep the proper aim, to keep the proper destination always in focus. Therefore we have to keep our spiritual practices very strong. Therefore we avoid bad habits, and we regularly chant Hare Krishna. Yes, Maharaj?
But what was the state of the living entity before it entered into this material world?
Pure? Free of material conditions?
Specifically, what
Satchidananda.
was the soul doing before it came to this material world?
It was engaging in Krishna service.
Was it engaged in Krishna?
Yes.
Where?
It's with Krishna. Prabhupada is very clear about this. Originally we were with Krishna, but sometimes we may fall down in the material world, or achieve impersonal liberation, again fall down, achieve impersonal liberation, again fall down. That we can't remember even when we are back with Krishna. But originally everyone has come from Krishna. There's nothing that hasn't come originally from Krishna. You see.
I'm asking the question because some people pointed out to me a quote in the stream about it, that nobody ever falls down from it.
Once you go back, then you don't fall down again. But Jai Vijay. We have the minute independence to fall down. Prabhupada wanted to establish that our original relation is with Krishna. He is the origin. We coming from Krishna in various forms, in various ways. And we have a minute independence, and we can misuse that and fall down into the material world. And when we reestablish our pure consciousness, then we realize our original relationship with Krishna.
Yes, Maharaj. Are the symptoms of Kali Yuga prevalent throughout the entire cosmic manifestation, such as Brahmaloka, are they experiencing the same?
According to they're prevalent, but they have much less effect on the higher planets. Just like in America, say we're going through depression. Everyone is in depression, from the rich to the poor. But the effect on the poor is more than on the rich. For the Fords, they lost 10% of their stock, or 50%, but because they had $1 million to begin with, so it's not that big an effect. I mean, they're still driving their, Cadillacs and flying in their Lear jets or whatever. They just have to economize a little bit. So in the higher planets, there's also Kali Yuga, but the effect is much less. And what effect we're experiencing on lower planets is much worse. Any other question? Do you have any question?
You were saying that because of the society making such a system that creates this separate designation for saying that nobody can get along, and the solution for that is to very much chant Hare Krishna, it will be out of that Bhava concept. And I was thinking, the thing is taught in the temple, sometimes make disagreements in like of communication. I was wondering, what does that do? Is that basically the particular Bhava concept, and what can we do about it, and that else comes up?
The point is that there are various ideas coming in everyone's mind. And neophyte devotees chanting Hare Krishna, he may get an idea. Doesn't necessarily mean just because that person has been chanting Hare Krishna for a short while that those ideas are all 100% pure. So some ideas are put in our mind by Maya. You see, and some ideas are put in our mind by Krishna. So when we get some materialistic idea, then also there's the alternative of a Krishna conscious idea. So at that time it's up to us to decide to do the Krishna conscious idea or to follow the materialistic idea. So Prabhupada said those who are very attached to the lotus feet of Krishna, they choose to do the thing which will please Krishna. And when we're not so attached, then we may choose to do the more materialistic alternative, and that creates problems and dissension. So when everyone is trying to carry out the order of the spiritual master, then there's a harmony. And when there's two opinions about what is the spiritual master's order, then that creates a schism, whether minor or major. And that's why we have to have continuously classes and discussions. And although just chanting Hare Krishna and doing our devotional services is in itself enough, we don't ultimately need so much theoretical knowledge to achieve God consciousness. But because in the application we'll get confused or misled or there'll be some differences, therefore we continually have to be discussing the basic concepts of Krishna consciousness so that there is no confusion about what is actually the desire of Krishna and the spiritual master. What are their orders? What are their instructions? Then there can be a unity.
After leaving the body, the soul takes a new body.
Yes.
In between death and birth, there's a short period. How long is that period? What happens in that period?
The Prabhupada described, the Bhagavad Gita explains to us that there are two bodies. There's a gross body, physical body, and then there's a subtle body. Bhumi rapo nalo bayor kang manor buddha eva cha ahankaramiti angme bina prakriti ashtadha. So the gross body is the physical body and the subtle body is our mental body. So when the gross body dies, then we go on to the next birth in our subtle body. So we're not liberated from our desires and our many misconceptions, and those mental subtle attitudes go with us. So practically we take rebirth almost instantaneously.
What about suffering on the hellish planet? Because on the hellish planet you have a different calculation of time, so the suffering goes through that extra.
It may only be a matter of seconds, but it may feel to you like hundreds of years.
So it's almost instantaneously that you take another body.
If you're born on a lower planet, that's different from being punished in a hellish planet. The hellish punishments are on a subtle platform. So that happens, although it seems like a long time, it's a type of conditioning, preparing you for a lower body. Like say that one's karma is to take birth as a pig. If a human being right with that mentality takes birth as a pig, he couldn't handle it. So that put him in some type of hellish existence where they'll, in a subtle plane, where they'll be feeding various type of horrible things, and then feeding stools every day. And then one day, when forcing to eat stool, when the person starts to think that stool is better than this day's stool, starts to see a difference, this stool is better than that stool, then they put him in the pig body. When they got over the point where it's completely, when they got to the point they start differentiating, then they put in, then they're ready to take that type of body. Otherwise, the subconscious couldn't relate. There has to be a little conditioning.
You would say that America is like a country on a higher planet, like a higher planet, higher situation as well.
Well, they have a higher national karma at this point in time. Just like to be born in England a couple hundred years ago or 100 years ago. It's the top of the world. The sun never set on the English Empire. But now you're born in England. Doesn't have the same type of situation. So now, before it was the Roman Empire, now it happens to be America. So the national karma here, I believe, didn't Prabhupada explain that because the forefathers were very God conscious, so now all the people, they're kind of reaping the benefits of that. But now again they're becoming materialistic, so then they'll probably lose all that good karma. Things will become more and more degraded. So there's individual karma, there's a family karma. Like if the wife is very pious, she's doing different sacrifices, that can affect, and that can also affect the total family. That may help the husband in his business. In India, the rich people encourage the wife to stay in the temple the whole day and do worship. He goes out and does the business. In the Marwaris, you always find that. Right? It's materialistic, but so there's a karma though that you can build up in a family unit. There's a karma you can build up in a race, in a state. There's a karma you can build up in a nation. And this whole planet has a karma also.
Is the living entity brought before Yamaraj in certain instances?
Yes?
Directly in front of him, who listens to what has happened, and to his judgment and all that.
At the time, just as we're dying, the whole life is taken before us, just like a kind of video review, newscast. We can see, just in a flash, we can see the activities of our whole life, just as we're dying, just as we're at that stage.
Well, then we don't know what's right and wrong either.
No, at that time, there's some conscience is there at that point.
But the Yamabuddhas don't break everybody and actually bring in front of Yamaraj.
Oh, they might. Not fully. What we see is that they do take the people before Yamaraj, and they're decided on. But whether they're decided on, where they're going is decided on. The exact formula. We've seen some people that mentions in Bhagavatam about before. Whether every person, I don't know all these details. But the person knows what he's suffering for. It's not like it's made aware to him, but not necessarily in a very primitive way. I mean, it's revealed automatically. You see, the whole life activities are flashed before. Then they, at that moment, then they can understand that that intelligence is given. They can understand what they did wrong, what they did right.
So we know there's so many living entities that fall into the material world. So will there ever come a time when all living entities will be liberated and go back to the spiritual world? Will there ever be a time when all living entities are liberated to the spiritual world?
Lord Caitanya indicated that wouldn't happen. Vasudev Datta, he wanted to deliver the whole universe and take all the karma on himself. At that time, Lord Caitanya said, even you deliver the whole universe, there's so many other living entities in a subtle, dormant state, they'll come and fill it up. Even you empty out one universe, they'll just fill up again. There's so many living entities that they're in waiting list to get in the material world. They're in a dormant state. You see, the fact that you're in the material world, that gives you an opportunity to get back to the spiritual world. But there are many that are still on the waiting list. Like waiting to get in the hospital. Right? 2-year waiting list. So, the material world is part of the Krishna is ever expanding, so there's always also dormant living entities. There's always scope for more. But nonetheless, whoever's here now, they're going to remain here indefinitely, perpetually, until they're liberated. So the devotee always wants to liberate these fallen souls. But there will always be some that don't want to go back. Even this whole universe is liberated by Lord Caitanya, but then more will come and fill it up. More will be lived. So you can go on preaching perpetually. When the universe is manifested, it's only manifested half time. In half time it's dormant. Much less than that. Much less than half time. Because Krishna doesn't always manifest the material world. Occasionally he manifests it. And when the material world is manifested, then it's only then during that period, 50% is in a dormant state during the night of Brahma, and 50% is active during the day of Brahma. So the total amount of time that the material world is actually active is a small fraction. Krishna sometimes, if he wants to come have a fight with somebody, may come down to the material world and fight with demons.
When this material world is manifested, then it's one day of Brahma and then living is active, whereas the night of Brahma, they all become inactive.
Yeah, they all return back into the body of that period of time, Mahavishnu and the Garbhodakshaya.
And they go to the pores.
They come from the pores at the beginning of the creation, and at the end of the creation, they come back in the pores of Mahavishnu. During the universal shutdown at the end of the day of Brahma, I'd have to just check the Shastra, but I believe they go into the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. They go in the stem of the lotus of Brahma and remain there until the recreation, or into the body of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu.
That universation will be a partial one or a complete one?
The universe itself, the shell is there, but internally everything is destroyed except for Brahmaloka. When Brahma wakes up, he recreates the universe again, the internal planets. And then the living entities are taken from their dormant state and put back in. So they're still stuck in the same universe. They don't get out of the universe during the total creation. During the total life of Brahma, they're within this one universe.
You're explaining how consciousness is polluted by material designation. This is the source of conflict in this world. And so I was wondering, we're finding, like in this country, that our to see us not in the purely spiritual movement, because we also explained that our movement, Krishna consciousness, is a spiritual movement, not another material movement. But sometimes Krishna consciousness movement is attacked because people are seeing us as another material opponent. So I was wondering if Lord Caitanya taught some specific secret how to pacify such people, how actually, in a way that was actually being very viciously attacked in this period of time.
Well, you just study his life. He was very viciously attacked all the way through his life. When he had to be, he was very strong. At the same time, he was very humble. And he always kept his character completely pure. The problem that some of the criticisms that people have come about due to the misbehavior of certain people, devotees. And most of the criticism, of course, are just completely concocted. Just speculation, just concocted. So, by getting association with devotees and by acting properly, like Lord Caitanya gave the example that for a preacher is like a white sheet. If there's a little black spot on it, everyone will see it. You're wearing a white dhoti. If you drop a little blue ink on it, everyone's going to just see, oh, he's wearing a dhoti with a blot of blue ink on it. Right? But if it happens to fall on your blue shirt, then no one's going to notice it very much. So, for the materialists, there are so many faults, but because it's like, a black spot on a black sheet, nobody notices it. But when you're preaching, then everyone's looking, what's your defect? Where's your fault? So therefore a preacher has to be especially pure in his character. It's a question of preaching. There are going to always be certain envious people, but then we have to see that the innocent people don't only hear the side of the envious people. Right? Take the innocent persons like a judge. Devotees at that time, they had the idea that preaching was materialistic. They just stayed in Vrindavan and worshipped Krishna and they didn't bother for it. So neither did they clarify to the Christian missionaries their misconceptions, and the innocent people got misled. So the responsibility is on the devotees to preach. People are criticizing if the devotee fades away, that's not going to solve the situation. Then we have to come up and meet the challenge. We have to become more vocal. We have to become more systematic about how we're exposing the innocent people to our philosophy. There'll be always some biased, envious people, atheistic, who no matter what you say, they won't even listen. But there are many innocent people who have not yet come. They're not by nature biased against ISKCON, against Krishna consciousness. Maybe they're been biased by the propaganda, but they can also be brought back the other way. So that will happen by distributing literature in the proper way and by exposing them to Krishna conscious association. Just like there was some envious person in the Denver airport, and he would start screaming at this girl, "You people are cheaters, you're rascals, you're treating the people, you're all false." And happened the temple president was there, so why are you picking on this young lady? I happen to be the leader here, I'm the temple president of our local branch. So if you want to say something, say it to me, but why pick on the young lady? So you're the rascal. He says, everything you're doing is all false. So you're saying it's false. What is real? You tell me what's real then. If this is false, what's real? He pulled out of his pocket a bliss bar. He said, this is real. Raisins, cashews. You bite into it, you can taste it. This is real. What's all this religion garbage? It's all false. This is the real thing. Food. So So you like this? This is you believe that is real? Yes. Tastes good. Tastes great. It's wonderful. Then he couldn't resist. He said, "You know who makes those?" Says here, Barsana Farms. That's us. Then that person, says, "You people make this?" Says, "Yes, natural food. We believe in natural living. Don't even know what we stand for. Natural food, natural living, pure, natural lifestyle, everything natural. You see, spiritual life, all natural." Whatever. He preached to him then, and then he said, "Well, then you people can't be all bad. Must be all right." He was attached to his bliss bar. He wasn't going to give that up. So, we have our weapons. We have to use them. Prasadam, books. Devotees should treat the other people nice. Shouldn't get puffed up. I'm a devotee. They're demons. You see, that way you won't be able to change their heart. They may be acting like demons or demon, that we'll see, but the devotee takes an attitude that whatever they may be, I'll try to. If they're demons, I'll avoid them. You see, but the devotee avoids. If you're going to make a show of force, then you have to have the ability like Lord Caitanya. He came with 200,000 people to Chandkazi. Lord Caitanya didn't go with, didn't come up he didn't go to the Hussein Shah and make any kind of representations. When he went in Navadip to the Chandka. He can go anywhere, but he went when he had the full control of the situation. So we have to be realistic. Prabhupada's utility is the principle. We have to see, if you're going to make some kind of a show of force, you have to have the backing. In Mayapur, we made a show of force. The communists said, "We're going to take your temple and we're going to turn it into an animal hospital." Then I called all the Hindu people from all around there, and I had 400 leaders, and we made a mass movement, and I marched with 25,000 people right through the village, right by the communist leader's house. And after that he came and said, "I never said that." You have to know exactly, when you have what, if you try to go with a shaved head up to the Kremlin and say, "Listen, you people are demons," you have to, then you just get sent to Siberia. Prabhupada said, "Keep your hair, don't shave your head." Be into the Russian disciples he had. Every place is different, you have to see, but the basic, when you're preaching, once we had this show for, we were very, yes, we knew you didn't say that, you should help us. "Yes, I'll help you, what do you want? Give us some land, we want to build a city." "Oh yes, I will do that." Lord Chaitanya was the devotee is to follow the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya in preaching, as able, you see, according to the time, place, and circumstance. And in dealings, one has to be able to deal in a humble way, offering respect to others, not expecting respect for oneself. These people, America, this is the 20th century, but they're culturally, these people are still they're still, where they're at. Majority of people are still in the Inquisition days. They have very little tolerance about anything except exactly what they're relating with it. It's practically like that. But the 20th century is trying to expose them that, they're supposed to be open-minded and everything. That's why in actually the big cities, normally like in New York, where there's very tolerant to various type of cultures, there's a very big acceptance of Krishna consciousness. Whether you have some very conservative places, Orange County, or some where the rednecks that they call them, then the tendency is to be very intolerant. So accordingly, we have to try to win them over. You see. Even in India, Prabhupada said to make a temple in Hyderabad, he said make a South Indian deity. Worship Krishna in a South Indian form that people can relate to. It's not a stereotype thing. At the same time, we want to have exposure that people know about us. But then when we're trying to win them over, then we may also, Prabhupada said, to distribute books you can wear kind of civilian dress. Whatever you want to call it. You can wear ordinary dress for preaching or for distributing books. You see, otherwise, for just propagating the Harinam, then we wear our dhotis and acharis. But if for preaching and necessary, we can also wear our ordinary, whatever this national dress may be. There are many places in France. They wanted to close our movement down. There, the socialist, communist sect also became very much against us. They organized massive prasadam distribution, and they organized the certain nothing. I mean, everybody we want to just have Krishna do it for us or something. It doesn't happen like that. We have to go out and serve Krishna. People have misconceptions. We have to work to correct it. Krishna is behind us. He will help us. It's not that, we're devotees, so we have nothing to fear. Krishna is going to do everything. It's not that type of, we're not just the 4-year-old cowherd boys with Krishna that are depending on Krishna because anyway they're helpless. But we're going out because this is the desire of Krishna, and we go and meet. And in France they met the challenge. And in due course, there was a very anti-current, and the whole thing turned around and went in our favor. So everything goes in waves. Sometime an opposition wave is there, so it may also turn around. So when there's opposition, that time we learn to build up our offensive preaching, our defensive position. We learn to build up. We become very strong when we have some opposition. And then when the current changes, then it's not the time to sit back, then the time to use the same momentum, and then you can go forward so much easier. When you're swimming against the tide, you have to struggle just to maintain your own level. But when the tide changes, then you can go so much faster. In Calcutta, the tide comes when we take our boat against the tide. You're lucky if you can just even go forward. But you keep on going, and then finally, when the current changes, then you go twice as fast. There was so much opposition in Detroit to our movement there. But now that they've opened up the nice cultural center and they had so much press, the Senate of the state has given us a resolution commemorating the opening. So we're not attached to infamy or to fame in that sense, praise or criticism. We have our business to go about, and we very systematically are to engage in that. And nothing material is permanent. So even the opposition is not permanent. That's also temporary. That will also pass. By very nature, it's material opposition. But if we take the opportunity during this time to not allow them to push us back much, but to counter that opposition, then we become stronger, and then when the current changes, we'll be able to actually make big progress. If we allow ourselves to be pushed back, then potentially by the time we regather ourselves, then when the current changes, we'll be behind. See, potentially, could be like that. Prabhupada said initially people are going to criticize, they're going to laugh at us. They just say, this is a joke. And then when they see that we're serious, we're still there, so they're going to oppose us. Then, when they actually understand what we stand for, then they're going to support us. You see, so in America at first they just made jokes, the Hare Krishnas. Even yesterday, read in the In-Flight magazine, someone pointed out to us. They said if you want to make a standing in a line, you want to make it shorter. It said wear a saffron robe and chant some mantras ecstatically, beating on garbage can lids, and everyone will leave the line, and you can some kind of thing. But it was something. So people are joking still. You see, they don't take it very serious. There's some people on that level, and there's some people they take it so serious, like the Russian government, like certain demons here, that they're trying their level best to finish this movement. You see, and there are already people that are very favorable. They've understood. Those are more normally the intellectuals, the religious, theological experts. They can see this is a genuine spiritual movement. So you have the different, according to one's intelligence. You can see the different stages already there. We've already practically won over the intelligentsia. But then you have, as you go down, then you have the administration. We haven't convinced the administration. We haven't convinced the business community. We haven't convinced, say, certain levels of people. Some we have. So we have to work. Initial response is, oh, this is funny. The next response is, oh, they're serious. Oh, this is endangering. They want to take my son or daughter, or they're going to change. There's going to be a new status in society. What does this mean? Even in India, there's sometimes a response. People get afraid. If everybody becomes a Hare Krishna, then where are the slaughterhouses going to go? Who's going to buy cigarettes? What happens to tea and coffee? So on and so forth. You see, the whole world economy. There are demons that think like that. If people actually become Krishna conscious, then they're going to stop eating meat. Then my meat factory is going to close. So I should finance this anti-cult group or some other group to stop these Hare Krishnas, because if they go on spreading, then in the long run it's going to be bad for my business. There are people like that. Srila Prabhupada said, if they knew what I was bringing to America when I came, they would have killed me. But we have to go on with our devotional service. Nothing's going to stop the preaching of Krishna consciousness. And these demons, they're not going to be able to stop it. But then when we have some opposition, we have to be more careful. That we are behaving properly, that we are presenting the philosophy properly. We have to consider that according to this time, place, and circumstance, what is the best method of presenting the concept. Something may be said in the Vedas. We don't have to stress certain things if it's not appropriate for this time. Although in the absolute level it may be alright, but for this particular time, place, it's not appropriate, so that we don't stress it. In some of the airports, the devotees were dealing with the people very harshly, trying to make quotas of book distribution, and as a result, people some people, they rejected that. They responded in an inimical way. So now, I think in most of the places, they've changed their ways of dealing with people. When the way they were dealing wasn't the way that Prabhupada or the Vedas say to deal, but they became over-enthusiastic. So like that, we have to see, according to when we're preaching, what's the reaction to that. And then we don't change our goal and objective in our teachings, but we may slightly adjust our methods according to the response we're getting. But we have to go on. If we reduce on one side, we'll increase on another side. The overall effect will be the same.